What's up, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ryan Trope. If you haven't already met me, this year I went from working a full-time W-2 job as an engineer to working as a full-time real estate investor, and I plan on using YouTube as a way of documenting my journey and showing other people the things that I'm up to while also hopefully helping them not make the same mistakes that I have. Today, I'm going to be working on this here whiteboard, hopefully talking a little bit about the pinnacle of what I do now, which is creative finance. And creative finance can be broken down in a lot of ways, but the first thing that I want to do is talk about the 3 C's. So in creative finance, there's going to be 3 C's that are not needed that you would typically need to buy real estate, to invest in real estate. All right, and the first one is going to be cash. So when we talk about real estate investing, oftentimes people's first thought is, wow, that requires so much money. I'll have to save up so much money. Maybe 5 years from now, I'll have enough money to go buy an investment property, right? And that's a common mentality, I think, and definitely the mentality that I had when I was looking into getting started in real estate investing. But that's a barrier that I've completely broken down since then. And so that is the first C that is not required. I'll get more into that later, but I'm going to jump to the second one, which is credit. Another big one for investors. Credit scores are all over the place, whether you've had a bad history, whether you just haven't had the time to actually build up a credit history or not. It doesn't matter in creative finance. And that's really cool because you're not going to be disqualified maybe for mistakes in the past or just because you're newer, up and coming, younger, anything like that. Credit's not going to be an issue. And then the last one, probably the most important one, is your credentials. And this kind of goes right along with credit. Because when we're talking about real estate investing, you're oftentimes going to be looked at as, how many houses have you already bought? Do you have a solid income, a solid job, right? Those are the credentials that are required oftentimes to get a loan, to be able to buy houses. And in creative finance, you don't need that either. So cash, credit, and credentials. Those are the 3 big things that we're going to be kind of breaking down today. And to do that, I want to break down the 2 primary methods of buying houses with creative finance. So to get started, let's just draw a really nice fancy drawing of a house here with Joe Schmo. And let's talk a little bit about a typical investment property. So maybe you have, maybe you haven't already bought a house, but whether it's an investment or a primary house that you're going to be living in, the normal way to go about it is to go to the bank and get a loan, right? And to do that, you need these 3 things, like we talked about. You're going to have to come in with a big down payment for your house, or at least some sort of a down payment. You're going to have at least usually 2 years of history with a W-2 job, and you're going to have a good credit score, among a bunch of other things and all the paperwork that's involved. That can be really difficult for a lot of people, depending on what stage of life they're in. And also, sometimes it's as little as, if you don't work a W-2 job, maybe you work for yourself or maybe you're a contractor, you may not be able to get approved for a house like that. So other options that we're going to talk about, this first house that we'll talk about here, let's say that this house is for sale for $300,000. And they're selling this house on the market. And for this example, let's say that the person has owned this house for 30 years, right? They've owned this house for a long time. They own it free and clear, and they're moving on to a new house, or maybe they've already moved out of this house and they're trying to sell it. So traditionally, if they were to sell this house on the market, they would have to get a realtor, and they would also be paying for the realtor for whoever came in and bought the house. And then there's also a bunch of fees that come with selling real estate, just like there's a bunch of fees with pretty much everything you do in life. So if we were to sell this house on the market for $300,000, they would end up with about $250,000 at the end of the day. So they would walk home with $250,000. Not bad. I would take $250,000 now if I was them. So not a bad deal. But generally speaking, if somebody's going to get that much money, then they're going to be looking at, what investment can I put this into? Are they just going to let it sit in their bank account? You never know. But there's a lot of scenarios where people will actually consider something called seller finance. So we buy houses like this all the time, seller financing houses, where instead of the bank coming in and requiring all of these things, you can buy the house and make this person the bank. So they become the bank for you and they finance that $300,000 to you. Question has to be asked, why the heck would they do this, right? Why the heck would they finance this house to me instead of taking the cash up front? Again, Maybe they're looking at investment opportunities. They're not sure what to do with their money, or they don't need the money right now, right? Maybe they're later in life. And so what they can do is they can sell this house to me for $300,000 like they were originally planning, but they can sell it to me and become the bank. So now I'm going to make payments to them instead of making payments to the bank. So maybe I come in and say, hey, I'll give you $15,000 down payment. Now, the first cool thing about that, down payment, 15,000, is that I just made that number up. And the reason I can make that number up is because once you go outside of the banks, there's no rules. You can give them $100,000, you could give them $0. It just depends on what works for them. You want to let them know that you have skin in the game, but there is no specific percentage or number that you have to give them in order to buy the house. So I'm just going to say that we give them $15,000 down, and then we're going to make payments just like we would to a bank on the rest of their money. So they then tell us, hey, we'll let you make payments to us and we'll hold the note, so to speak. We'll hold the rest of the money on the house and you'll pay us, let's say 5% interest, right? So now we're making payments at 5% interest on this instead of them having that money sit somewhere else. And they're just going to start compounding all of that money over time. And oftentimes there'll be something that's called a balloon, where they say, hey, we'll let you make payments to us for 5 or 10 years, and then you'll have to pay us the rest of the amount. So let's say it's at 5% for 10 years. That means for the next 10 years, every month, we're going to be making payments to that seller with interest on their money. And then at the end of 10 years, we're going to pay them the rest. And this is where it gets pretty cool. So after that 10 years, total overall, they will have made $430,000. Right? So they were originally, let's go back, they were originally looking to sell this house for $300,000 on the market. They would have ended up with $250,000. But instead, by selling it to us and financing the house, becoming the bank themselves, after 10 years, they've almost doubled the amount of money that they would have made had they sold it traditionally. So that's just one reason why somebody would sell or finance a house to you. There is a million reasons why, but I just wanted to break down conceptually kind of what that would look like. And now I want to jump into the even more likely scenario that we run into all the time and what I spend most of my time doing now. Let's get Joe Schmo back up here. And they're going to be selling this house, again, let's say for $300,000. But check this scenario out. So in the past couple of years, housing prices went really high. Most people that are watching this probably saw as prices skyrocketed and people were buying houses. And now, as interest rates have gone back up and things have kind of leveled out a little bit, houses aren't going up as much. Some of them are decreasing in value. Some of them are staying about the same in value. And so the main example that I'm going to use here is somebody that bought a house, let's say in the last 3 years. So they bought this house and they're trying to sell it for $300,000, and they bought this house, let's say 2 years ago, for $300,000. So it was worth the same amount back then that it's worth now. That's pretty accurate for most areas right now, is that it's worth about the same. But again, remember what I talked about earlier. So on this $300,000 house, they're going to have to pay for both agents and closing costs and other fees that might come up. And so for round numbers, again, let's just say that they're going to end up with $250,000. Now here's where things get tricky for them. So if they sell this house for the same amount they bought it for, and they end up with $250,000, but they owe the bank close to $300,000, then that means for them to sell their house, they're going to have to pay $50,000 just to sell it, which not only do most people not want to do, but also most people can't do that, right? I know I couldn't do that right now. So selling your house at a loss is not ideal, but there's a lot of scenarios. Maybe you're moving across the country or something came up or whatever it may be where you have to sell your house. So people get stuck in this really tough situation where they owe more for their house than they can make selling it. And that puts them in a spot where these houses are now sitting on the market for a long time because they're trying to sell the house for more than it's worth just to make sure that they can get their money back. These are the exact people that we talk to on a daily basis because we have a solution for them that we are now solving problems for homeowners just like this every single day. And that is a different type of transaction. So the first one we talked about in creative finance is seller finance. And this one is going to be called subject to. Okay. And this is what I spend almost all of my time on now, is subject to transactions. So in general, and I'm going to have to make a ton of videos breaking this down more, but in general, a subject to transaction means that you take the underlying mortgage, that $300,000, and you take that mortgage and you just start making the payments on it, and nothing happens. You don't go get a new mortgage, so you don't need cash, credit, and credentials, right? You just keep the existing mortgage and make the payments on that mortgage so that it stays in place. Why would somebody do this? Just like the seller finance example, let's break it down. So again, if they are going to have to pay $50,000 to sell their house and they can't do that, then they may be interested in allowing us to take over their mortgage and make the payments, because if we take over their mortgage, we're able to pay them more money. Why? Well, right now, if you were to get a loan, it would be probably about 7.5% interest. That's about the going rate right now, 7.5% interest. Although that may not be the highest interest rate you've ever seen, it's certainly a lot higher than it was a couple of years ago. And this loan that was bought 2 years ago is probably somewhere around 3% interest. So the difference between 7.5% interest and 3% interest on this house payment is going to be over $500 a month. And that is a huge difference if you're trying to invest in a property and rent it out and make money. So for us, we say, hey, we're able to pay you more for this house because we're going to take that loan over that has a much lower payment and be able to turn it into a rental and actually make money on it. Win-win scenario, right? So that's what we do. It's called a subject to transaction. What that means is you're taking over the loan subject to the existing mortgage or the existing liens on the property. And when we do that, again, like I said, we take that over. They sell their house to us. So we now own the house. We get the title, right, or the deed to the house, and they get out of there without having to spend $50,000. But because we're saving them that $50,000, it's oftentimes, we'll talk to people every day that'll say, if you can take over my mortgage, you don't have to pay me a dime. I just want you to get this thing out of my name, out of my hands, so that I don't have to worry about it. So we're able to come in and offer very little money for these houses, sometimes even take them over for literally $0, just to take it off their plate, just to take that mortgage, that responsibility off of their plate. And so that's a subject to transaction. It's a very in-depth transaction that I'm going to break down a lot more. But today I just wanted to go over a brief overview of just creative finance in general, why it's so helpful to people, and a little bit more about the cash, credit, and credentials real quick. Is just the fact that when you're doing creative finance, when I was getting started in real estate investing, in my head, I was thinking maybe I could buy one house a year. That was my goal, was to buy one house a year, save up a bunch of money each year in between, and then be able to go get another mortgage, right? And so, after 5 years, I'd have 5 houses, not bad. But in my head, I was thinking, okay, well, how can I speed this up? How can I continue to grow and not just buy a house and then have to sit and wait for a year? Well, first off, I'm going to need all of these things. So I'm going to have to keep my job, which, as I already said, didn't end up doing. But you're going to need those things. You're going to have all of that to be able to get these new properties. You're going to have to save up a bunch of money, and you're going to have to wait a long time. And on top of that, what I learned this year was that I'm also going to have to pay very high interest rates to get these new houses. So now, knowing what I know now, we're able to get houses under contract without the 3 C's, without any money, every day of the week, all the time. And so I'm now able to buy basically as many houses as I can find without needing these things. And I can now scale much quicker, learn way faster, right? Because as I'm buying more houses, I'm learning new things every day. And I have the opportunity now to buy 10, 20, 30 houses, hopefully in the next year, without having to worry about the fact that I don't have a W-2 job. If I went to a bank right now, they would not give me a loan, right? I don't have a job. I don't have actual proof of income. I don't have any of that stuff. But without that, I'm still able to buy houses like this every single day. So the opportunities are endless when it comes to this. I'm definitely going to be doing some videos where I go a lot more in depth on subject to specifically, but also seller finance, and break down the 3 C's as well. But for this video, I just wanted to do a basic overview, talking about creative finance in general. how I utilize it to help build my portfolio, how I've been using it to help these sellers that are in really tough situations right now, as the market continues to go down and people continue getting stuck with these houses that they can't pay to get out of anymore. So that's a brief breakdown of creative finance, seller finance, subject to all of these things. And like I said, I'm going to continue to break those down more and more, but hopefully this added a little bit of clarity on what creative finance is, what I'm up to. If you are gaining value from these videos, I would love it if you would hit the like button, leave a comment maybe on this video, and subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to keep working on providing as much valuable content as I can. I appreciate you dropping in. Until next time,